Good morning, everybody. It's getting close to 10 o'clock. We're going to get started here in just a minute. Looks like we have 108 people on. If you can, I would encourage you to turn your camera on. So like Danira and Kim and Kelly and Lori and Paula, we all get to see everybody. Oh, everybody's jumping on. This is always nice to, even though we can't be in person, it's nice to at least see people. Katie and Braden and Stacy, it's always good. We are hoping that next spring, we can be in person. It's always nice to have that full day where we get to spend a lot of time in person, but we're just still trying to be sensitive and protect each other. And another challenge is some of the venues in Topeka where we try to host these are not like the Holiday Inn and the I can't even think of the names of the places because they're just not hosting right now. So maybe we can get something at Capitol Plaza, but we will be working on that soon. But in the meantime, we still think it's important to try and give you some updates. We've got a pretty good calendar of events for today. Here in just a minute, Craig is going to give you an update on the fiscal side. Teacher licensure, good conversations there. The first hour just around KISA, but we'll have some more in-depth updates from licensure and accreditation. A lot going on with ESSER. So it seems like, just a couple years ago, we didn't use words like ESSER, remote, hybrid, and we didn't have that crazy word COVID. So we just have this new vocabulary, living in our culture now, but we'll give some updates on ESSER initiatives. Just want to make sure that you're all aware of where we're at in those, and I'm actually going to give that update. Scott Smith's team with Career Standards and Assessments has some updates for you. Some accommodations for assessments. Jay and Tammy are going to give an update where we're at with redesign, and we'll have Randy on later. He is busy this morning, but he's going to join us towards the end, and then just some upcoming events and things for you to have on your calendar. But a lot to pack in the next 2 hours. So with that, we're again, I'm just going to be, our team will be monitoring the chat room. So if you have things that you want us to address, we will be monitoring that. Valora, thank you for organizing that first hour. I think it was a lot of good discussion. I was in and out. We had agenda planning for the next November board meeting. So that's where I was jumping in and out of. And our typical Friday morning here at the agency, we have what we call the spit test. So we try to ensure, just so you know, kind of our protocols. Again, if you want us to come out to your district to do something, to present, to meet, whatever it is, we're going to follow whatever your protocols are locally in your district. But just so you know, we don't let anybody go out to work in person at your district unless, number one, they're vaccinated, and number two, we test every Friday morning, so we know the next week before we go out that we've tested negative. So that's our every Friday morning from 9 to 10:30, our staff. One, if they know they're going to be going out next week, they'll go down and do the spit test in the tube. And then we also just have staff that, hey, I was at a wedding. It's just been a week. So we test every week prior to we go out. So one, to protect you, and two, to make sure that we're not that person that showed up to a district and spread something. So those are just some assurances that we try to do, not only to have a safe learning environment here in our agency, but to ensure that if we do go out, we're vaccinated and we've tested negative before we go out. So just to make sure, again, that you're all aware, we are traveling, but we're trying to travel safely. So with that, I know I saw Craig on here. So good to see you, Monty. I'm just looking across, you know, and it's even Ryan, Ryan, likes to pick on me a little bit. Well, who doesn't? But it's just good to see some of you. I did see Matt McKee here, a lot of good colleagues across the state. So it's just good to see you guys on a Friday morning. And I'm going to turn it over to Craig. Let me see. I believe he is on here. Yep. Craig, it's all yours.
All right, thank you. And just to add to what Brad told you about our testing every Friday, I know in school districts, you're always looking for ways to build the collegiality and the comradeship with the people you work with. Have everybody line up on Friday morning and spit in the tube together. That just works for wonders. Good opportunity to share a few moments together. So having said that, I'll try to be a little more serious here and share my screen. Always an adventure. And I can see Brad. Can you give me a thumbs up? Can you see? All right, here we go.
You're good.
So fiscal update, and I'll tell you ahead of time, not a lot of smooth segues in this presentation. There's about 3 different topics that we'll touch on a little bit. And one doesn't tie real smoothly to the next, but information you might want to know a little bit about. One you've heard more about than you ever thought you would. As we mentioned earlier, topic we didn't even have 2 years ago, but remote learning. You're probably aware, but there tends to be a lot of confusion still in different districts. What can I do with remote learning this year? What can I not do based on House Bill 2134 from last spring? So for starters, this is the definition that's in House Bill 2134 of remote learning. Now the red letters I added, obviously they don't write them that way in statute. I put the student in red because we've had questions. What if a teacher is quarantined and wants to remote into the classroom and teach? Does that make all my students remote learners? No, the bill is about what the student's doing, not about what the student does. I'm sorry, not about what the teacher is doing, where the teacher is located. So if the student is not physically attending the attendance center and you're providing curriculum and instruction that is intended to approximate the learning experience that takes place in the classroom, that student's a remote learner. All well and good. But the bill specifies that you cannot provide more than 40 hours of remote learning to any student, except they may be exempted by the local board. An individual student may be exempted by the local board due to illness, medical condition, injury, or extraordinary circumstance. And in our interpretation, extraordinary circumstance includes quarantine. So if a student has been quarantined, your board can exempt them from that 40-hour limit. So the intention of the bill really is to limit what we had happen last year, where you had to send a whole building home for weeks at a time. That's what they wanted to limit. And if you have to go to that then there's another step that takes place that we'll talk about here in just a minute. And just to clarify, if you have students on an IEP who are receiving homebound services, so they're not in school, but they're at homebound, an IEP is still federal law and it still prevails. They are not going to be counted as a remote learning student when their IEP calls for them to be at home receiving homebound services. The reason that's important is actually the bottom of this slide. Any student exceeding 40 hours without the exemption is funded at $5,000. Well, if you know a little bit about school finance, you know that the base this year is $4,706. So why is that such a big deal? Well, the big deal is all the weightings that go with every student. Low enrollment weighting, if they are at risk, if they are English language learners, career tech ed, any of those issues that provide additional weighting. On average, and there's no such thing as the average student when it comes to funding even, but on average, that's about $2,300 to $2,700 you're going to lose on each kid if they have to switch to remote learning because they spent 3 weeks remote learning in February. So the exemption applies. Your board can exempt every one of those students individually that's been quarantined, and they will report that to the state board. Not for approval, they just have to report it. So we know who it was. And we're providing a form later this month to school districts to make that reporting a little easier and secure. So that's remote learning. So jumping topics, Brad mentioned earlier ESSER funding. So I'm just going to give you a little background on the dollars and cents and what's happened so far. ESSER 1 and Spark expenditures. And what we refer to as Spark, and your district probably does too, is the money that your counties made available a year ago at this time. Counties had money available from the CARES Act that they most chose to share with their school districts. So school districts spent money there, and they spent money with ESSER 1, which was about $80 million for school districts in Kansas. And you can see on this slide, or hopefully you can see how those funds were spent. And bear in mind, this is when we were first going into and coming out of the pandemic. So March of 2020, everybody's closed and is scrambling to figure out how are we going to teach our kids when they're at home and can't come into school, and then going into the fall of a year ago. So not surprisingly, a lot of the money was spent on educational technology, getting systems in place that would allow students to learn remotely. A lot of money was spent on cleaning supplies, repairs and improvements to the facilities so you could deal with the additional cleaning that was necessary and so forth. So it shouldn't be any surprises that that's the way the money was spent. ESSER 2 was approved last December. So districts started spending that money last spring through the summer and so far this fall. And if you look at this chart, on the left side on that bottom bar graph, learning loss has already become the primary way we spend our ESSER 2 funds. What are we doing to help our kids and to address the learning loss that took place? And all of the yellow bars that you see are those uses primarily focused on teaching and learning. So you may hear a lot about indoor air quality, and districts are spending money on HVAC systems to upgrade them, and they are, and that's allowed. But that's in the middle of that bar chart, that's $10.8 million compared to $84 million so far that's been addressed towards learning loss. So districts are trying to target their money already to those issues that are going to help your students in the classroom, help your students socially and emotionally. You'll see $21 million so far for mental health services that school districts have spent. And Brad's going to talk to you later about some of the requirements with ESSER 3 that will focus even more on learning loss. But I wanted you to have that background a little bit and maybe kind of address why it makes sense that the ESSER 1 money was spent for things like technology and indoor air quality and personal protective equipment and so forth. It's a function of where we were when that money came out. And now that we're further down the road, we've addressed our technology needs, we've addressed our sanitation needs for the most part, and can move on to address learning loss. Okay, change topics again. There has been an interim education committee appointed that will meet for 2 days later this fall. Those days haven't been identified yet. The chair of the committee is Representative Christy Williams. And the items you see listed are the topics that were identified when the request was made to form the committee. So funding increases under the Gannon lawsuit, longitudinal reporting that the legislature has put in place, requirements for that reporting over the last 5 years or so. Updates to KSDE's rules and regulations, which were just approved a month ago at the State Board of Education. There were some updates made to those rules and regulations. That committee would like to know more about that. The state board's legislative priorities, and they met with legislative leaders earlier this week to review those a little bit. They will talk about them again. The state board will at their November meeting. Then the State Department's priorities. What did Brad and Randy pick up on their 50-stop success tour? What was the information that was shared? What was the feedback they received from the individuals on that tour? Achievement expectations and funding for at-risk students. And I'll just tell you, for this committee and for the upcoming legislative session, and probably for the past 2 or 3 sessions, as Dale Dennis would say, that's the peanut. That's where the focus is for a lot of legislators. The Gannon court case told us we needed to put more money in because at-risk students were not doing as well as they should be. We've put more money in, so what's happened? Show us the results. And as you well know, maybe the middle of a pandemic is not the best time to see a lot of improvement taking place. But that will certainly be a focus of this committee and of the legislature in January. And then constitutional roles of the legislature, the state board, and local school boards. Who's responsible for the curriculum you teach? Who's responsible for the standards? Who's responsible for the funding? Is there any overlap? Some would like to help your board with that. Some boards would like to help the legislature with their responsibility. It all goes back and forth. So that's some topics that you'll see out of this committee coming up. I'm sure it will make the news, and we will continue to hear about them through the upcoming legislative session. So one suggestion, take it for what it's worth. When you have an opportunity to talk with your legislators between now and January, and notice I said when, not if, take the opportunity to talk with your legislators while they're at home. Once the session starts in January, they get really busy. They listen and have a chance to hear you a little bit better now. When you have that opportunity, instead of talking to them about how much more you need, that's fine, but talk to them about what you've done already. What are the steps you already have taken as a school district to help your students stay in school? Whether that's testing to stay and learn, whether that's other steps you've taken so that students don't have to be quarantined and lose as many school days. What are the things your district's put in place, and what kind of success are you having with them? And then maybe most importantly, talk to them about what you're doing to address the learning loss that happened last year. What are the things that have been successful for you? What kind of training have you had? Are you trying new programs? Did you look at some of your curricular areas and instructional practices differently? In other words, let them know the good things that you're doing and the impact they're having on kids. As you well know, that's not always what makes the news. That's not always what they read on social media. They tend to hear a lot of negative things, and they'll hear it from some of their colleagues when they get to Topeka, right, wrong, or otherwise. So if they can hear now that, well, no, in my district, this is what's happening, and our teachers are having some success, that'd be really helpful, and for your legislators, as well as for your community and your students. So just a suggestion there. And then one more slide that is really some good news. State revenues. The state has a revenue estimating group that meets twice a year. They meet in April and they meet in November. So the last time they met was April. They estimate how much money is the state going to have. Kind of a helpful estimate to have if you're going to build a budget. So that estimate is what the legislature and governor used to finalize the budget for the coming year. So last April, they made an estimate. And if you read the slide there, you can see we're exceeding estimates by just a little bit. In FY21, we exceeded those estimates by $758 million. Now think about that for just a minute. FY21 ended June 30th. The estimates were made in early April. So we're only talking about April, May, and June. The state brought in $758 million more than we estimated they would. Pretty good number. So far this year, which would be July, August, and September, just those 3 months, we're $332 million above the estimates. So if you do a little quick math, since April, we're $1 billion above estimates. That's a significant amount of money, even on a state budget. In November, the estimating group will meet again. They'll update their estimates to reflect that $1 billion plus whatever we gain in October. And that's new estimate is what the governor will use to present her budget to the legislature in January, and what the legislature will use as they work through the legislative session. So the state has money. This is a legislative session prior to an election, which typically means it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican, you like to be able to cut taxes prior to an election if you can. They'll certainly be able to do that, but they'll also be able to address a number of other needs, not just education, but everywhere across the state. So money will not be in as short supply as once feared. So some good news in that with, and I will stop there and hopefully maybe figure out how I quit sharing my screen. Oh, there it is, clear over here. I've got too many screens open. And there we go. If you have any questions, I'll hang around for a little while and watch on chat if you want to throw anything in. And if not, thank you for not dozing off while I was talking. Appreciate it and enjoy the rest of your day. I know it's going to be worthwhile for you and time well spent.
Thanks, Craig. And again, if you have questions, just throw them in the chat, and Craig can always jump back on and address those or answer them in the chat. And we are right on just a little ahead of schedule, so that's good for us. I'm going to turn it over back to Michelle.
Good morning, everyone. Good to see you all. I'm Michelle Miller. I'm the Director of Teacher Licensure and Accreditation. And just like Dr. Nyen-Swander, I need Dr. Newen-Swander to tell me whether or not you can see my screen share. Okay, good deal. So if I go ahead and go slideshow from the beginning, nothing changed, Brad? Still good?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, all right. Do you hear a video? Okay. Made that go away in case you did. Good morning. So interestingly enough, Dr. Watson, I heard Brad say that he's busy this morning. Well, it makes you nervous when he pops his head inside your door, which he did just 5 seconds ago, which makes me think, uh-oh, I hope the busy isn't something I need to help with. So it was great to see him pop in. I know you'll all look forward to hearing from him in a little bit, but I am excited to bring you some licensure updates and accreditation updates as well. And sorry, I have to stop share because every time I click on my PowerPoint, can you hear my voice too in a recording, friends, or not? You can. Great. Okay. All right. Now
we hear something in the background.
You hear me. So I'm not sure how to make it stop doing that. I've lost my little screen share. Now it stopped, right?
Yep.
Okay, so I may not be able to share my screen with you. I will just chat and give you the PowerPoint later. What I did was use my Hot Topics PowerPoint that has a video recording behind it and edited for this presentation today. So Jeanette, if you have it, that it will not have that voiceover, that would be great if you could throw that up there. But I'm going to just talk from my PowerPoint, hopefully without messing things up too much. So I'll start with licensure. I love to start with licensure, and I always tell people 6 months ahead of time, my friends, would you please renew your license 6 months ahead of time? Put that reminder in your phone so that you know to do that. The worst call I get is when a candidate calls and says, my license expired, what do I do? But I have super duper news. I can now say not 6 months, but you can cut that to 3 months. Why? Because our licensure staff was given a tremendous directive to get smarter, faster, quicker, and into the 21st century in license processing. And we have done that. You all have felt the growing pains of that with submitting forms, et cetera. But you will now know that most of us are on a professional license, and it's possible you've renewed that and did it the same way 5 years ago that you in a second renewal, exactly the same way. Not the case anymore. You're going to see something completely different. That's quicker, smarter, faster, turns around very quickly. And I am happy to tell you, my friends, this is like drum roll worthy news. Complete applications submitted to our office as of yesterday are processing in less than 10 days, and many of those less than 5. You should unmute and do happy dances, and I'm not kidding you. That is a phenomenal amount of progress. I had nothing to do with it except to say, keep going team, keep going, how can I help? Shane Carter is our new assistant director that took over from my good friend Susan Halbert, but Kathy Grossenbacher in IT, thanks Lori, in IT and her team, and the partnership with those two teams has been phenomenal. We could have been here sooner, but that little thing that Brad talked about called COVID happened. And so we find ourselves here now, and licensure has just moved along phenomenally. And I'm very, very proud of that. So Jeanette's copy also has the audio. Great lesson learned. Great lesson learned. I will get this PowerPoint to you all without my lovely voice audio. The next piece that you'll see when I send you that PowerPoint is that we have created some opportunities for you on the accreditation side to get some really great updates in a quarterly newsletter. So that PowerPoint I'm going to send you will have a link to that. You also may or may not be aware that accreditation has its own email address, accreditation@ksde.org. And you can get personalized support throughout the accreditation process via that email address. I had the opportunity to have a phenomenal conversation with the group prior to this meeting starting. One of the things they talked about was the foundational structures and those rubrics. And I'll tell this story for the 14th millionth time. Jeanette always says when a new school calls, you have to have in place foundational structures and be compliant. Those rubrics are a teaching tool for you all to understand how that works for you and your system. They're built progressively so you can see yourselves where you are and you can see yourself moving forward. So know that that PowerPoint I'm going to share with you has that in it as well. Next, some just general accreditation reminders that I want to give you. And I'm like Craig too, I've got 47 screens up. So inside that newsletter, you'll have a September, October sort of checklist that we will try to provide for you on a monthly basis, or when it comes out quarterly, you'll get, okay, so we gave you September, October. Here's what you should be thinking about November, December, blah, 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 blah. In that PowerPoint I'm going to send you, you will see that there is a link to our monthly KISA updates. The first year we did this, we did it via phone call prior to COVID and learned that doing a Zoom meeting like this is much better. So there is an opportunity for you to be a part of those, that monthly update piece. So I'm excited to bring you that as well. Oh, this will be fun. So now it's time for Jeanette, without the PowerPoint assistance, to talk to you about what can be a very confusing topic, the authenticated app, and some updates and whatnot that we have made. So I'll mute while I try to fix this other and let her chat with you about that.
Okay, I'm going to try to do this as well without her. I wanted to just provide some updates in terms of the KSDE application. We did update the application, and therefore we've been getting a lot of calls. So I just wanted to mention some things that you should know. The reports, we get calls that they can't find the reports. The reports are not lost. The system right now, because we did new reports, new system yearly updates, and those kind of things, you will find the current ones as the first thing. Underneath it, you will find the past reports. And then there's an archive section for anything that has been archived, okay? So if you don't find it, just scroll to the bottom, you shall see those. Past is anything. So if you're year 4 and you can't see your years 1, 2, or 3, just scroll down to past reports and they should be there, both your OVT and your system yearly update. So that's where you will find those. The other thing that I wanted to mention was that all systems from year 2 through year 5, because year 1 will be doing this report as a year 1. And so they're going to go through the whole, that system yearly update for year 1, and they're going to complete it as normal. But years 2 to 5, if you're in that level and you're completing year 2, you need to go back into year 1 and only complete, add a goal in there, you add a goal, or if you already show goal 1 and goal 2, go into those areas and scroll all the way down where the statement says measurable goal, state your measurable goal, okay? That should be done in a SMART goal fashion to put it there. So you're going to take your goal for the cycle and write it in there. The reason that you need to do that is that this application builds from each other year to year. And so when you put your information there, it will allow the questions for that section to open up the next year so that you can answer the questions with regard to that goal. We've been getting a lot of questions about where do I find my goal? Well, your goal should be in your improvement plan or your action plan. Okay, you should have had one of those written, because if you're trying to create change, this is part of that execution. What's your plan? What are you going to do? That's process. And how you're going to execute it. You need to follow the plan and see what's going on and analyze and update, etc. So if you don't know that, then something might be, you might want to rethink about your process a little bit. However, if you don't find your goal, please, you can go to year 2. And in the old report in year 2, there is a question about state your priorities. We're not looking for this year to put in that year 1 a goal area like rigor or relationship or anything like that. We're just looking for your actual goal statement of what you were doing, how you're measuring it, and how are you going to show that you've been successful. Okay, so it's a SMART goal. So go in, take a look at your priorities. You should have answered a statement about what data you use to talk about or define those priorities. So if you don't have a goal statement, this is the perfect time for you to now develop that statement the way it should be. Or if you have moved away from what you were doing previously and you're starting new, then you can go ahead and indicate what your new goal statement is that's measurable, and that will allow you then to the next year be able to answer the question, so that in year 4, year 5, 2, or 3, you'll have those in the reports. If you have, and I know that is confusing, and without showing you it, it could be even more confusing. So please feel free to call us or email us, and we will be glad to provide you support. We've been doing a lot of that. The other piece is compliance. Everyone needs to go in their system and look at the compliance area for the year that they're in. The compliance will show up if you have any issues. It will give you what the issue is, whether you're working on it, whether you're not compliant, and it will tell you what you need to do or what you have indicated that you will be doing, and then you will write something on that. If you don't have an area for compliance, just write NA on it. So just mark NA for any area where you have no answer or the question is not needed for that year. You will find out that there are some questions in this new application that will tell you this is an optional question for this year. Remember, this is an authenticated application, so you have to save often. As we always said, it's best to really write your reports outside and then probably cut and paste, or if you're writing it right there and then remember to save. Every section of this report has a save button, so be sure to do that. And then the only other thing that I wanted to let you know is that we have streamlined the artifact section. And when I say streamline, I am talking about at one time you had a lot of options to select and indicate what the document was that you were putting in. So we just said, hey, whatever year you're in, you select that year. That will give you the drop down for the sections of the report. You click on what section of that report you are providing that artifact for. And then there's an area, you upload your document, and then there's an area underneath that says comment, which is for you to then describe what document that is. You can even, as you end up doing that, this is evidence for XYZ if you wanted to, okay? Sometimes we label things differently than what the document is because our minds work differently. So remember that the ARC needs to know specifics as well as your OVT. And I think that's it. If you have questions, you can put them on the chat or you can just ask me or contact us.
So I feel like I'm back in my first year of ESOL summer school in Dodge City, Kansas in kindergarten. I was not a kindergarten teacher, and the first day the world just fell out from underneath everything I believed about teaching and learning. That's exactly what happened here. We had this dramatic PowerPoint for you that's stunning and phenomenal, and it fell apart, and you all should see what my computer is doing now. Amazing things are happening right now. I'm surprised that I'm even able to speak with you. And what I know I need to do is shut down and restart, and what I know I absolutely can't do right now is shut down and restart. So I'm going to keep walking through this to the best of our ability. As I said, we will share the PowerPoint with you. Also, don't let what Jeanette just told you make you go, oh my gosh, KISA is the worst. It is the worst thing ever. This is a golly Moses. We will walk you through that. I said this, I'm going to repeat a lot of what I said earlier, but I know we have new folks online. There is nothing inside that summary report or inside the whole entire accreditation process that keeps you from being creative, innovative, and phenomenally wonderful for kids. So don't let that piece, that one piece of accountability that the ARC needs to make a recommendation to the state board, be the thing that makes you hate accreditation. My cell phone is out in the big wide world. Call me, I'll help you, I'll walk you through. I'll come see you. I'll do whatever's necessary. We'll help make that happen. There's also nothing inside the process that keeps you from delivering high quality, phenomenal education to kids. So just keep that in mind. Okay. I want to that nuts and bolts technical piece that Jeanette was talking about. I don't want to be the thing that keeps you from doing great things for kids. Okay. All right, so I am going to share my screen again, only I'm not going to the PowerPoint, y'all. I'm going to a different document that will just, somebody could shout out. Can you see a fact sheet, Melissa? Jeanette, can someone see a fact sheet? No? Okay. What a great day I'm having, right? Wonderful day. Okay, well, I'll share that with you later as well. And I'm going to just keep talking. So the reason why I wanted to share this little fact sheet with you is there are 3 definitions that I've shared with the state board for the last many, many months regarding accredited, conditionally accredited, and not accredited. So if you are accredited, Jeanette, this is the one I sent you last night. You might try to see if you can share it. The definition of accredited is that the system is in good standing relative to the compliance pieces you heard Jeanette talk about, and that they have provided conclusive evidence of growth in student performance and conclusive evidence of an intentional quality growth process. You'll hear Dr. Watson talk about continuous improvement relative to process, execution, and outcomes. Again, nothing inside accreditation that keeps you from having high quality, engaging, innovative opportunities for kids, detailed in a process, executed well in your system that raises outcomes for kids, right? Conditionally accredited then means that the system continues to be in good standing with compliance, but there's a blip. There's something, thank you. Please someone tell me you can see Jeanette's shared screen. Oh, wow. I wouldn't necessarily call this a fact sheet, friends. Drafty with that template from KSDE regarded to a fact sheet. I just needed somewhere to throw these definitions to get out into the field. Conditionally accredited then means that there's a blippy, that there's something wrong with either that conclusive evidence of student growth or conclusive evidence of an intentional quality process. Okay, and we have had systems come before the board whose conclusive evidence with the results were not good, or that the process was not good. All right, you can even have a couple of stars and be recognized and not have a quality process that you can articulate. And again, teachable moments, right? That house that you heard Jeanette talk about is where we keep all things about the accreditation story, so that when you win the lottery or you just decide, thank you so much, I want to go hang out with my grandkids, the next person who sits in either the curriculum seat, superintendent seat, etc., has a way to go in and say, so that was the story of this district. I do not need to take them on a whole nother trail here. We can stay the course on these things. Not accredited then is the system has compliance issues. We're at bad news bears time here. Not in compliant, you don't have evidence of student growth and you don't have evidence of results. So those definitions are there. That will also be provided to you later on. Let's see, let me look at my lovely PowerPoint and share with you what was going to be next. So in our newsletter, my friends, I put a little paragraph and I put a little bit of information about the regional support model that we are providing to systems. And in doing so, I was trying to provide some clarity. Wow, there she goes. Okay, good deal. All right, I am ready for slide number 12, or 11 or 12, that's fine. So we put something out there to you all that says, yes, we are doing some pilot opportunities. And what we are doing is providing intentional professional learning on all things relative to a growth cycle, relative to continuous improvement for systems. I said earlier, I try to hang a hook on something you know. You all know school improvement. You also know that school improvement is about collecting data and doing a great analysis with that data. It's about setting goals based on the gaps that you see inside that data. Many of our systems do not have clearly articulated, keep going, Jeanette, and you'll find the one that I'm really wanting to talk about. Thank you. Next one with the graphic right there. So that's me hanging a hook. That's us saying this growth cycle was a part of continuous improvement. We're molding the two together because there was a lot of learning that took place through the redesign project. There was a lot of learning that took place through KISA. There's been a lot of learning that's happened with MTSS. There's been a lot of learning that's happened with KLN. So we're aligning our language to help simplify what we're doing with you, and we're providing you intentional support locally. We're coming to your door, man. And right now we're doing it out at Southwest Plains. We're doing it at Orion, and we're doing it in Lawrence with Greenbush. And we are trying to pick up the piece that we've known we always needed to do, provide more support here. And we're now in a place, thank you, COVID, I got to tell you, I have the most phenomenal staff ever right now. I am scared to even talk about it. I brought donuts this morning. I'm so happy with staff on licensure, volunteer commission, and accreditation. I have phenomenal people ready to help you. Okay. So what you're seeing is our intentional processes, our intentional professional learning to help you in these areas. Next slide, please. Thank you. Why are we doing this regional support model? Again, we want to help you be creative. We want to help you be innovative, and we want to help you reach those outcomes for the state board that are the North Star. I will tell you too, my friends, 35 years in public education in Kansas. I have never felt more engaged by the state board. Yeah, all right, so I'm a state employee. I work for the state board, right? I get that. But you'd have to be living under a rock to not know that this was the goal, especially if you're an educator. Now, I'm going to say there are a lot of folks out there, non-educators, that don't know this, right? But us in the world of education, you know this. You know that state board vision. You know what their goals are: to raise student achievement, help students be socially, emotionally prepared to go out into the big wide world. So these are the things that we're focusing on in our trainings and doing our, I'm going to try, thank you. That's a great question. I'm going to try when I'm finished to get the link in the PowerPoint for y'all. This is what we're providing you intentional support on. And this is our effort right now to, you've heard us talk about merge. You've heard us talk about put the best of this and the best of that together. Well, that is what we're trying to do. And one of the phenomenal things that we learned was local support that you can come to regionally was what was incredibly powerful. We also learned that we needed to be concise in our language and more consistent. So we're trying to do that. More importantly, we learned about teachers as leaders. That piece, you cannot leave that out when you're talking about continuous improvement. So with that, I'll put up the slide, Jeanette will, that has our team on it. There are any number of people at KSDE that you can reach out to. Please feel free to do so. And yes, I will get the PowerPoint into the, yep, and Pat's also showing you how that's being done, but I'll try to take care of that for you. And with that, Brad, I'm happy to answer any questions as well.
Thank you, Michelle and Jeanette. And like Pat just put in the chat, we will have the recording as well as all these PowerPoints on our website. Pat, is that on my page? Okay, I'm going to quickly, just because I get this all the time, where people are like, well, how do I even get to your page? So I'm going to show that to you real quick. So Michelle and Jeanette, can you see our agency website
Yes.
here? All
Yes.
right. So the easiest way, if you go hover over agency, then come over to Division of Learning Services, the title, that takes you to my page. And most people look for my name and they're like, well, I can't find him. It's the title. Again, it's the title, Division of, well, my mouse is moving faster. Division of Learning Services. If you want to go to Craig, if you want to go to Randy, but if you want to go to me, it's right there. And you scroll down, all of our lunchtime hot topics recordings are on here. And then down here, we have curriculum leaders. And then there's all the agendas, notes, the PowerPoints. So that's how you get to the resources, not only for curriculum leaders, but each month when we do our lunchtime hot topics, you can go in here and you don't have new last year, you don't have to watch the whole lunchtime hot topic. You can go just to a specific recording. So anyway, I just wanted to share with you where you find all the resources. It's on my page, but sometimes it's hard to find my page to begin with. I also put a lot of my PowerPoints as well as Randy. We put our PowerPoints on there That way, if you ever want to take some slides to use it for staff development, you can go find our presentations. But just to kind of follow up with Michelle's and Jessica's, when people are saying is KSDE changing, the process is going to look very similar to what it's been. We're just trying to align language, because one thing we've learned over the last 4 years is people will say, well, if I'm doing redesign, do I do KSDE? Or if I'm doing MTSS, they're all very similar processes, but we wanted to come together. I think at one point we used to show a slide where the roads were coming together. We're at the point where we need to align language so you know what we're talking about, and it starts with really knowing your data and who you are. So we just call it data analysis, you know, instead of MTSS calling it this and redesign. So we all came together and said it's time to align the language and align the supports. We're piloting it this year with a select group of districts because we know there are 96 systems going in front of, they're in their 5th year cycle. They'll be starting a new cycle next year. And the other big change is we're going to take the guesswork out of school improvement in the whole process. So we're partnering with our service centers, USA, KASB, Kelly, Tazen, all of them. And we're going to be in a region close to you next year. If you're starting a new cycle, I would encourage you to bring a team, and we'll take the guesswork out of school improvement. We'll personalize it, and we will give you the supports, which I don't, you know, I'm not even going to kid that I've been in school improvement as long as Jeanette, nor know as much as a lot of our staff. But what we're doing differently, we're not just going to give you a guidance document. We're going to come out. So in Southwest Plains, in Smoky Hill, and I'm not even going to read what Monty's saying or putting in there. I'll read it later because he's probably, am I bleeding? Did he just take a shot at me? Because I saw Jay laugh a little bit. But the biggest change is we're going to send a team that's going to be of service center, of Tazen, of our staff. We're going to go 6 locations across the state and help you, because school improvement is hard in itself. So we want to team with you. You can collaborate with other districts in your area, and we're going to walk you through the phases just to help. Because I truly believe Kansans, when they say they want to lead the world, I believe we really want to lead the world. But we're going to have to be more intentional and work together in doing that. That's why we're starting the regional model. So those of you starting a new cycle, if you're like, hey, I just really need, we're at a space, we're going to work this through. There's a lot we don't know yet. That's why they call it a pilot. So we will be getting you more information. I know there's probably more questions than there are answers, but as we go through this, you know, it could be that if you're engaged in a region, you may not need an OVT because you have a team working with your district, and then your service centers can give you support in between. And so anyway, we're really excited about this. So I just wanted to add just a little more to Michelle's comments about our why. That's why we are wanting to do this, because we know with turnover, we know many of you wear multiple hats. So we just want to give you the supports that we know there's a lot of districts out there don't need us. They just need to know that all they want to know is what is it? But we know a lot of districts are like, hey, we're just overwhelmed. All right, we hear that. We're going to come out to a region close to you and help support you through the process. So, all right. I'm going to, we are still 5 minutes ahead, and I'm going to try and keep us that way. I'm going to share with you just a little bit more, like Craig mentioned, about ESSER. So that's not what I wanted. This is. Can you see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
All right. Let me see if I can get it into the, can you see it in the play mode or the full mode or the, no, I don't know why mine doesn't do that. So I'm just going to leave it in this format. So can you see ESSER initiatives? All right, thanks, Pat. So just to give you some updates on ESSER initiatives, the letters training for the science of reading. We have really three kind of phases. First of all, phase one is, and I'll just kind of share with you, while the vast majority of our districts were in person, there were times throughout the year that the majority of our students were hybrid and remote, because it was really 5 counties between Sedgwick, Shawnee, Douglas, Johnson, and Wyandotte. We had a period of time, and I may pull those slides up just to give you the visual of it. If not, it might be in Randy's kind of presentation later. But there were times where the majority of our students were in districts that were hybrid and remote. So our first focus were those districts that were most heavily impacted with hybrid and remote. We're working with those districts. The second phase is we're training, updating training for our service centers to provide letters training for our more rural, and we're starting to move that direction. And I know some of that's already happening. The third part is training our professors in our higher ed institutions in our teacher prep programs on the science of reading. So we'll be working on this over the next 2-3 years. So I just wanted to give you an update on letters. For math, we could not find a training on math similar to the science of reading with letters. So we're working with our TASN partners. We are creating professional development around the science of math. That will be ready to be rolled out next fall. And again, we'll have to look at just kind of the logistics of how to roll it out. But right now, we have a team of national experts working with us on creating a Kansas professional development for math. Around assessment literacy, again, we're looking at 2 assessments. And the reason we're doing these 2 is because our curriculum leaders, our principals, our superintendents, these are the 2 that are most predominant in the state of Kansas. So FastBridge and then the STAR through Renaissance. So we are just from a state level trying to leverage to get you more trainings on how to be more literate around how to use those assessments, not only how to use them, how to make sense of them. And then when you see where the gaps are, what evidence-based strategies then align to that. So that is going on right now. I know that your staff is extremely busy. It's the start of a new school year. We're still in this kind of a hurricane of COVID. You're having a hard time with substitutes. We know that, but for those that can access and can fit it in, it's available. And this will be going on for the next several years. We also have the Kansans Can Competency Wheel, the interpersonal, intrapersonal, and cognitive. We are working with Patty and Amy, who has developed that. They are creating additional products, tools, professional development that is going to be made available to you to try and address the socio-emotional, all of those aspects, because it's not just academic. I want to remind you about Higher Paths. That is a group out of Manhattan here in Kansas that has created resources for you to share with parents about the importance of post-secondary, but not only the importance, but just getting them to understand that success is just as equal at a technical, at an associate's, as a baccalaureate. So I just want to, if you have not come across Higher Paths, go to that link, higherpaths.com. That is a really valuable resource to share. It is geared towards parents. It's also very meaningful for your teachers to make a connection with your students to the different career paths that are out there. So it's also valuable for teachers, but it is first and foremost something for you to get in front of the parents so they start seeing, because most kids, their experience in thoughts about beyond high school is only with what they experience either with their family, a relative. So it's a great way for parents to have conversations and for parents to see the value of the multiple paths out there. The other thing is, I just want to remind you of the Kansas Teaching and Leading Project. We had to, at this time a year ago, move to an online virtual professional development site so your teachers can get access to professional development, since we lost a lot of that in-person opportunity. So I just want to remind you of the Kansas Teaching and Leading Project. Again, that was a partnership through our service centers to create professional development that can be accessed anytime, anywhere. Just a reminder that Craig mentioned the uses for your ESSER funds, whether it was ESSER 1, ESSER 2, or the upcoming ESSER 3, the allowable uses are similar across all three of them. But ESSER 3 is right around the corner. And I just want to remind everybody that 20% of your ESSER 3 has to go, no less than 20% has to go to learning loss. And I just want you to be thinking about summer learning and enrichment, extended day, after school programs, extended school year. Those are just examples of evidence-based programs that you ought to be thinking about. And it can also address not only the academic, but the socio-emotional. You need to be looking at your subgroups. One thing that I'll tell you early on that we've noticed, participation, at least on the state assessment, had more of an impact on our subgroups, especially our African-American students. So I want you to really be thinking about looking at your subgroups and what can you do for learning loss to help them not only academically, but socially, emotionally. And then finally, I just want to make sure that in your plans, you need to be having stakeholder input, not only just to meet the requirements of the plans, but this is just, even in KISA, redesign, school improvement, this piece is so important to be having conversations with your students, your families, teachers, principals, civil rights groups, be meeting with your local chamber of commerce, meeting with your Rotaries, just really having that comprehensive input about how we provide these services to our kids. With the federal ESSER funds, it is historic. We've never had $1.4 billion of federal funds pushed out over the next several years to help us address, in a lot of cases, issues that we even had before the pandemic, but the pandemic has kind of highlighted and exacerbated some of our gaps, some of our issues. And if you get your community together, I'm just going to give you an example here. I've heard some districts that are saying, I mean, we've got $7 million. How are we going? Because it is one-time money. We understand that, but it's an opportunity to use it in some cases to kickstart, to get something going that you would not have been able to. I'm going to give you an example, something like Jobs for America's Graduates. While it may be one-time money, it might be something that in your community, you could get your community together to say, if we could get this program started, and we can show you the impact that it has on helping more kids graduate with the skills to go on and be successful in our community, if we could use these funds to leverage to get it started, would our community come together and help us continue it? Those are just opportunities I think that we have, that we need to think differently than just, well, what do we do when it's gone? Your community may very well, if they see the types of results and progress, may well come together and help you continue some things that you might not be able to do once the funds are gone. So those are just some things I wanted to share. And with that, I'm going to start looking at the chat to see if there's any anybody on here, Michelle or Jay or Tammy, or anybody see something that a question that I need to address.
They have been helping you out the whole time, so.
Awesome.
I think, yeah.
All right, well, we're going to stay on track, and I'm going to turn it over to Career Standards and Assessments, and I'm going to monitor the chat here. So do we have Scott or Beth, or I'm not sure who's up first? Maybe Joanne?
I can start, Brad.
There you go, David. Thank you.
Sure. So we wanted to, she's not on yet because she starts on Tuesday, but let everybody know that we have hired a person for the dyslexia program manager position. Her name's Dr. Lori Curtis. If you're familiar with K-State at all, Lori used to teach at K-State, elementary educators how to teach reading. She's a published researcher on dyslexia and has a very extensive background. So we're very excited to be welcoming her to the team. And I think she's gonna hit the ground running when it comes to everything with dyslexia. So we just wanted to let everybody know that that position is being filled starting on Tuesday next week. So when she's here, give her a little bit of grace to get her feet settled in before you start bombarding her with questions. Joanne McCrell has been doing a great job covering that position after Cindy left us. And so I believe Joanne's going to be sharing a little bit of information, but I'm not quite for sure if she's been able to log on yet or not. She was double booked, Brad. I don't know if is she on yet. I'm looking. I don't see her.
I don't see her either.
I know she's going to go into a little bit of detail about dyslexia and just do some reminders. So if we can come back to her, that would be greatly appreciated.
All right, is Beth on here? I'm looking. We are a few minutes ahead of schedule. And I know Beth is planning on an update. How about, why don't we?
I can do the assessment update. I'm ready.
Oh, there you are. Thank you, Beth.
Okay. So I'm just real quick, a little of it will be repeated from Brad, but I just want everyone to know, in case you're not aware, that the assessment results were released on the report card on Wednesday. So if you haven't looked at them, or you're interested in how your neighboring school district did, or anything else, you can go out and look at them. And as far as the results, we would just encourage you to continue with your formative assessments, possibly use interim assessments, really track where the individual kids are with their learning loss, and make plans accordingly. The second thing I have is, if I'm talking too fast, let me know, because I want to get through it, because I know everyone, there's a lot left on the agenda. Interim predictives. The fall interim predictives are complete. We had an increase in participation. Those of you that participated, thank you. I hope you find the results helpful. The winter interim predictives will be on December 6th through the 17th. The CAC at their meeting next week will be reviewing some enhancements to the interim score reports. So stay tuned, and we hope to have that available for you for the spring one. Interim. The summative window will be March 21st through April 29th. So we moved it forward again for you after we heard everyone not liking that late start last year. So the CALPA opens the end of January and closes March 11th. We have a screener that will be it's new. It'll be available next year. We'll be piloting it this spring after the CALPA window closes. And we'll be asking for volunteers to help us really hone in on the screening. You know, the screening is really just a pass-fail. So we're trying to build it so that if the students aren't proficient, there isn't any reason to keep testing. So hopefully you'll like that. So stay tuned. We'll have more information for you on that later. ACT released the 21 results on their website on Wednesday also. So just a reminder, when you go out and look at the ACT results, ACT uses the last score. So if a student, the graduating cohort class as reported by the student taking the ACT test, right, the year they plan to graduate, the last score. So if they take it multiple times, that's what ACT reports on their website. On the KSDE website, we won't release ACT results for a little while because we actually go in and match it to graduates, and then we use high score. So a little bit different data on the ACT and KSDE websites. The pre-ACT is open right now. If you haven't got signed up for that, you need to get in touch with Lee Jones immediately. It closes November 12th. Work keys. After a lot of comments and discussion, particularly with the CAC, the decision was made to move work keys to the fall. So we kind of avoid that over testing in the winter for ACT and work keys. So online work keys, it's available. It opened on the 6th of October and it closes on the 9th of November. The first paper administration is over. The second one is October 20th. If you haven't signed up for that, it's probably too late, but there is one on November 3rd. Work keys is available to juniors and seniors. There's no restriction to just junior testing anymore. So if you haven't made that opportunity available to your students, you need to do that. And then ACT will offer in March, 3 times, March 1st, March 29th, and April 12th. Those are the paper dates, and the online window dates are about a week to 10 days around that time. So sign your juniors. ACT is limited to juniors, so be sure and sign your juniors up. One other thing about ACT is that kids qualifying for free and reduced lunch, ACT has some opportunities for them to get additional testing for free. So be sure and take advantage of that. If you go out and look at the ACT research, you know that the more times the student takes the test, particularly between test 1 and 2, the scores will go up. And so kids, even though it might not be used for admission purposes right now because of the pandemic, scholarships, a lot of scholarships are still dependent on ACT. So ACT dates are March 1st, this is paper dates, March 1st, March 29th, and April 12th. Okay. Then I just want to circle back to the FastBridge and Renaissance conversations that Brad had with you a little bit ago. FastBridge, so with the ESSER monies that we had available at the state, we entered into a contract with them to buy down the cost of the assessments. And so to take advantage of that, there's a form that you need to fill out that says you're opting in to participate on the state plan. Part of the opting in, just so there's no confusion, and I want to be transparent, is that those results will come to the state. They will not be published anywhere. That's just simply us receiving data. So we can do a little bit of research on our own to see how the scores are lining up and benchmarking with our state assessments. So make sure you opt into that. If you're currently if you've already paid your contract with ACT for this year, FastBridge, sorry. If you've already paid your contract with FastBridge, you can work with them and they will give you credit. So you'll be getting like 2 for 1, right? 2 years for the price of 1. They'll credit next year for you and the state will pick up. So the plan is that anyone that wants to participate with FastBridge can get 3 years of the buy down of the contract. The other thing I want to point out to you, and I'll be sending it out on the listserv next week, is the link for the training dates. Part of, as Brad mentioned to you, part of what we're trying to do is increase assessment literacy and appropriate uses of assessments. So the training piece with FastBridge was a big part of our contract. They do both live training and online training. So Greenbush coordinates the live training through FastBridge, and then FastBridge does their own online. The link will come to you. The link, it's a live document on training. So don't just print the PDF and think that you know when the training's happening, because it changes. If there aren't enough people registered, we'll cancel the training. We'll add different trainings depending on demand. We contracted for a certain number of trainings, and if only 5 people are going to show up, that's we've made a decision, and I apologize, but up front, if you were one of the 5 schools that signed up, but there's a maximum capacity on each training, and we need each training to pretty much be at capacity. So we'll reschedule when more people can attend. Renaissance, STAR reading and math. We did not buy down this contract, but if your school uses Renaissance STAR reading and math, we did put a significant amount of money into professional development so that you can better use the assessments and understand how to use the products with fidelity. The other thing that goes along with that contract is access to all of your staff to Renaissance University. And that's probably the biggest piece of that. If you already use Renaissance, that you will have the free access to Renaissance University. So those are my assessment updates.
Hey, Beth.
Yes.
Sorry, there are lots of questions about how to qualify for FastBridge, or where the form is, or what do you do to take care of that with your ESSER 3 funds?
Right. So I will, like say, probably on Monday, I'll put a link out, and you contract with FastBridge through the FastBridge representative, and then they bill us once you've signed up and with them.
Perfect.
So the ACT for seniors who didn't take the test last year, is that the question? So if you have questions about ACT and getting kids signed up, contact Lee Jones. It's just ljones@ksde.org, and he will work with you to make sure that we can get your seniors approved. The test records go up really are only allowing juniors, so we can make an exception for you, but we really encourage you to get the juniors tested this year. So, other questions?
All right, well, I hear that Joanne is on. So David, do you and Joanne want to take it from here?
Absolutely. I would like to introduce Joanne McCrell. She was our ELA consultant, but now she has moved into one of the program manager positions on the humanities team. And since Cindy Hadeke has left KSD this past summer, Joanne has been doing double duty as she's been in charge of dyslexia and answering all those questions. And she has a few things she's going to share today with the group and reminders about dyslexia. So Joanne.
Thanks, David. One of the big things as far as questions that I've been getting, I want to put out there for everyone so that we start to get a consistent message. People are asking, what training do I need to do this year? What do I have to do screening all 3 sessions? And so I'm going to answer some of those questions for you. And if you have additional questions, I'm open to I welcome that. So first of all, your focus this year is threefold, okay? One is your 6-hour training, and you may have done that 6-hour training before this school year, before August, and that counts, right? Because we were given that year of reprieve from the school board. So know that 6-hour training should have happened by August 31st. Know that if you do not have that done, you want to have that scheduled. So if you have OVT teams coming in, that it looks as if you're doing the right thing. Oops, we forgot. Now we're doing the 6-hour training. The thing with that is that not all teachers need to be trained. And I understand that smaller school districts, it's easier sometimes to get everyone trained, and there's value in that. But we're only looking at anyone elementary endorsed, early childhood unified, any 5 through 12 ELA teacher, a reading specialist, or school psych. Those are the people that have to be trained. Your new teachers that fall under those categories should have been trained already on that August 31st date. So know that if you do not have them trained, you want to get a date for that. I do have access as far as the training that Cindy and I did that's broken up into 1-hour segments with the materials. It's the same that Greenbush posts on their site. So if you have that, it's the same thing. So that's number one. Number two, you need to have a tiered system of support. You need to look at that. If you do not have that in place, you need to start to build that for your district of what would be a kid that needs intervention at tier 2 and what would be a kid that needs intervention at tier 3. What data are you using to place those kids, and then what supports they're going to be given. Okay, so this is like a build-up year. Okay, so we want to start to look at that tiered system of support, which involves that universal screener. And I sent out a rubric or a crosswalk basically of what the requirements were, and then what each one had in the area as far as norming data of where that was. It says missing this assessment or missing this. Many of them, if you go in, will have an assessment that you can put in there that would hit that information, but isn't normed for that particular grade and or testing window. So just know that yes, you can use those, but they're not normed. So you can't really make, well, there's just, it won't be a problem for the state. I'll just put it that way. So know that as far as your screening data, that does include 6 through 12, 3 times a year. Okay, so that universal screener that you chose, whether it be MAP or A reading, auto reading, fast track, or STAR, like it doesn't matter which one you picked as long as it's a valid, reliable, nationally normed comprehension assessment. So you have to give that 3 times a year. There's some little buzz within the past week or so that you only have to give that in the fall. That's incorrect information. Okay, we want to start to get, remember that continuous improvement cycle that Michelle was talking about earlier for KISA. That this is basically the same thing. We're looking at continuous improvement of how we're going to better our ability to reach kids who have characteristics of dyslexia. So we want that screening data 3 times a year. And we want, knowing that secondary, you're going to have to train teachers how to give an oral reading fluency. This is the year to do that. Okay, so know that those expectations is what we're striving for. And then the last thing is we want to start looking at our resources that we're using, our curriculum resources, and evaluate them and the data that we're getting back to see where we're missing in structured literacy. And we do have something on the website that allows you to go through and evaluate your structured literacy materials and to the extent that they should be done. We did do a structured literacy rollout. I just put it in the chat. That is a 3-year timeline of what you should be doing within training, what you should be looking at, what you should be looking at as far as resources, what you should be looking at as far as universal screening. And so know that we've done that. I put that in the chat already, and it does work on that continuous improvement cycle. So people started to ask me, okay, so Joanne, after the 6-hour training, what do I need to do as far as training? Is there required hours? Is there things that we have to do? Well, your 6-hour training has to happen every year for your new teachers. Okay, your new teachers that are new to your staff that hit those areas that I said happen every year. You can supplant, however, specific information that you're giving to your other teachers on structured literacy. So if I'm doing phonemic Heggerty's phonemic awareness and I'm getting training done for that, then I can supplant that phonemic awareness of Heggerty instead of the hour or whatever in the 6-hour training. But after this year, that 6-hour training besides your new teachers is not what you will use. You will be either doing training on the tiered system or assessments or an aspect of resource that you may have bought to hit a structured literacy piece. So know that. The other thing is the most significant cognitive disability kiddos, because we, yes, you can supplant letters, Danira, yes, you can. It goes towards the phonics piece, so yeah, you can do that. The other thing that I would say is, as far as your most significant cognitive disability kiddos, those kiddos at this point do not have to be tested as far as the screening is concerned. You can put them in as 0, not tested. We are at this point working with our SETS team in order to get an assessment that would better align with those students' needs. So that's the update that I have for you. Any questions? Oh, foreign exchange students, sorry, they have to be tested. They have to do all of the testing that's required of everyone else.
Okay, well, Joanne, I'll just let, well, all of you just want to monitor the chat. And we will jump to Carrie and Julie for an update on accommodations.
Good morning, Brad. Carrie is unable to present today, so I'm going to be filling in for her. So
All
I
right.
will see if I can share my screen and you can see it. And can you see that screen? Thank you. All right. I am Julie Ewing, the assessment coordinator on the CSAS team. And like I said, Carrie was unable to present today, so I'm going to be sharing her information with you today. When we talk about accommodations, there is a difference between an accommodation and a modification. And we want to make sure that we are not adding modifications when the student is taking state assessments. KSDE has an accessibility manual that will give teams guidance on how to work through the decision-making process when determining if a student needs an accommodation. The questions on this slide are just questions that educators should be able to answer for a student receiving accommodations. For the Kansas Assessment Program, there are 3 tiers that are available to students. The universal features that are on the Student Kite portal are available to all students, and then tiers 2 and 3 are just available to a few students. Now, it is critical to remember that a student should be using these accommodations consistently throughout the year in order for those accommodations to be used on the state assessments. We don't want to just have accommodations checked off for state assessments. We want these students to be familiar with them and using them all year long. And you do need to document for tiers 2 and 3 those accommodations that students are using. We have several different options for text to speech. So we have a couple of options that are available to all students. And you don't need to change anything. You don't need to add them in the educator portal under the student's personal needs profile. They're just available to everyone that wants to take advantage of that. Those universal features are directions and then the science test. Students can have the science test read to them using the computerized voice. Remember, a human reader is not allowed for any of the state assessments. Now we have a couple of text-to-speech options that are available to those students that are on IEPs, 504 plans. The text and graphics is available for students on a SIP plan as well. So that the text and graphics doesn't have to be approved by the state. And it is like for math, if they want to read the questions and answer choices. The non-visual is the one that must be approved by KSDE. And we've made a couple of changes in the guidelines that we had required for the last couple of years. One of those changes is you are going to submit the checklist to the email address that you see on the screen, the TTS non-visual at ksde.org. And that information is due by January 31st. Because we have made a few changes in the accommodations for the ELA passages, and remember, we're just talking about the passages only. This is a reading test. It measures reading, so we want to really focus on that. The flow chart is the first thing your team will do your team will work through if you are trying to determine if a student is going to be eligible to fill out documentation for approval or not. Now, there's been a couple of misunderstandings within districts, thinking that every student in your school needs to have the PAR, or the protocol for accommodations and reading assessment, given to them. The flow chart is the first place that you're going to go, not the PAR. And we'll talk about the PAR in just a second. You have to be able to answer every question with a yes in order for you to move to the next step of completing documentation for approval. So a couple of things that we changed. This year, it's only available for a student that's on an IEP or 504 plan. It's not for students on a SIT plan this year. And it's not about simply reading below grade level. Remember, this is a reading test, and we want to make sure that we are assessing reading ability for our students. This flow chart and the next one that I'm going to show you, this next document, they are going to be available. They are available right now on the KSDE.org assessment page. So you can go there and look, check these out. Now, if you have finished looking through the flow chart and you can answer yes to everything on that flow chart, then you're going to complete the checklist. And this is the checklist that you are going to submit to the text-to-speech non-visual email with all of your students' information here. One of the pieces of this documentation, it's number 9, it's requiring a protocol for accommodations for reading, or what we call the PAR. It is a free screener that's available, and you will need to give that PAR to the student for this documentation. So only the students that you are filling this out, this checklist out for, will need that PAR. The PAR is free. The UPAR is one that you would need to purchase. So you don't need to purchase this test to give the screener to your students. And on October 11th, there was a webinar on how to give the PAR. It was recorded. And if you were not able to attend or didn't know anything about it, you can still go to the TASN website and view that recording. So you didn't need to register for it to be able to view that. And just a reminder, if you have students that are non-visual and need Braille, Tuesday, November 30th is the time to make sure that those PNPs are marked correctly in the educator portal. Your test coordinators will probably already be on top of that, but just in case they're not, just a reminder for that. And if you do have any questions, you can contact Carrie Rogers. Her email is on the slides. You can also send any information or questions to the text-to-speech non-visual. We are monitoring that and answering questions on that slide as well. And I believe that is all I have, Brad.
Thank you, Julie. Again, we're still monitoring the chat area. So with that, we'll move to Tammy and Jay.
All right. Well, good morning. Good late morning to everybody. It's great to see you on here. Jay Scott, I'm the secondary school redesign specialist. Thanks so much for joining in today. We're going to start off with a little different question. So in the chat, I'm going to throw out a question for everybody to answer in the chat. Just very interested. Do you prefer fictional or non-fictional TV shows? And whatever your preference is, if you have any good recommendations, throw them in the chat. Let's fill it up.
While those are
Ooh,
coming in, Jay, what do you prefer? Fictional or non-fictional?
Tammy, you're putting me on the spot. No, I prefer non-fictional. I love documentaries. And one I'm watching right now is Bad Sport. It's all about these high-level sports scandals. I'm just weird like that. I love the documentary side of things. How about you, Tammy?
When I watch TV, I either want to completely escape into the Hallmark Channel, or I want to watch HGTV, which is kind of like a documentary. So, you know, it's either one or the other for me.
I like it, Tammy. I like it. Sarah Perryman, how about you?
Yes, so I like a mix of everything, but I really enjoyed the documentary on Amazon called Lula Rich, which explored the LuLaRoe fad. And I'm waiting on my good friend Jeanette to watch it. So the next time we drive to Wellington, we can talk about it on our 3-hour road trip. So I'm looking forward to some conversations about that one in the near future.
Absolutely. And I see, you know, Julie Canizzo, big into non-fictional, Peyton's Places. Never seen it, Julie, but now I'm going to look at it because you recommended it. A lot of Ted Lasso in there, really good stuff. So we'll get to the reason we asked that question in a second. So this is our redesign update, and I think we have a chance to introduce ourselves. So if we could go to the slides and pull those up, we will do some introductions. Tammy, you want to kick us off?
Sure. So I'm Tammy Mitchell. I'm the elementary redesign specialist, and I recently defended my dissertation to earn my educational doctorate degree from Kansas State University. So I will be walking in December, and purple is my new favorite color.
Sarah?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Sarah Perryman. I'm the redesign coordinator here at KSDE and just help support the work of redesign across our state. So glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. And again, Jay Scott, I'm the secondary school redesign specialist. And I got to take a moment to congratulate Tammy. If you all know her, you know how hard she works. This was an incredible accomplishment to get her doctorate. And so I couldn't be more proud to be her colleague and just work with her through this. It's been amazing. So big congrats to Dr. Mitchell. As we move forward, we're going to talk about a little bit about the impact to date for Kansans Can Redesign. So we'll pull up the map and you can see the 6 cohorts of redesign in Kansas, starting with Mercury and ending with Apollo 3. And I'll explain what I mean by ending here in a second, but these are all of our redesign districts that have applied, been accepted, and have formally engaged in the redesign process. We know there are other schools out there that are redesigning, but maybe not officially part of this. But these are our 71 districts and 190 schools over about 4 years' time, 5 years' time. So we're very excited to be working with these schools moving forward. Going back to the slides, whether you prefer fictional or non-fictional shows, we hope you check out the real stories of 6 of our redesign districts through a K-State documentary that's been dropped already. KSU, their College of Education, has been very supportive of the redesign process, and they, for free, are doing this documentary. We appreciate the leadership of Dr. Debbie Mercer, the dean, and Rusty and Kyle, their team that have really put all this together. But it's been over a 2-year project with many COVID-related delays, but it's finally out there. And so we're really excited about it. And I think we can take a moment here just to check out the promo. In 2015, the Kansas State Department of Education traveled across the state, convening community conversations made up of family, business, and community partners, as well as educators, to see what they wanted to see in successful high school graduates and what role K-12 schools should play in developing youth. From this tour, we gathered thousands of responses to help create the Kansans Can school redesign model. Kansas Redesign focuses on 4 principles: student success skills, community partnerships, real-world application, and personalized learning. Starting with just 7 school districts and 14 schools, Redesign has grown to over 190 schools in 71 districts, doing incredible work. The journey has not been easy, but schools will tell you it has been worth it. Join us as we share 6 of these compelling redesign stories. So we hope that you will dive in on a little bit of nonfiction documentary this weekend. Every Sunday at 6 p.m., KTWU here in Topeka broadcasts 1 episode. So like this Sunday is Dighton at 6 o'clock. Now, if you're not in the KTW viewing area, don't worry. We're going to send all of the episodes out on KSDE's YouTube channel in November, and we'll continue to promote them through Twitter as we go. There have already been a couple that have gone. David Brewer in Leavenworth, David Brewer Elementary in Leavenworth, and then Liberal was last weekend. So if you want to get caught up, that's great. But we look forward to having those out there. And really, this series really serves as a testament to all of our schools out there engaged in this work of redesigning your school. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to Tammy.
Thanks, Jay. You know, one thing I'd like to add regarding this documentary too is that Dean Mercer and the College of Education at K-State really wanted these videos so that they could show pre-service teachers what types of schools they might be working in the future. So we tried to select a broad range of different parts of the state and different sizes of schools. So this is twofold. I mean, it's nice that it can be on KTWU, but more importantly, we wanted an archive of videos to show pre-service teachers to get them really excited about joining their career. And so for the rest of our brief time together, we're going to be telling you some highlights from our redesign professional learning communities. We'll give you an Apollo 3 update, and we'll talk a little bit about the KISA Pilot Day 1, specifically instructional versus transformational leadership. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah.
Thanks. So our redesign PLCs, I'm going to go ahead and put that flyer in the chat there for you. This year, we are focusing on engagement. So our PLCs this fall are focusing on building engaging relationships. And this spring, we're going to focus on building engaging schools. And so to format these in a way that really follows the process that we lead our schools through in redesign, and that's those 4 disciplines of execution. And so each PLC will establish a clear focus, and we have that clear focus of engagement for the year. And within each of these PLCs, we want to provide our schools and teachers with strategies that might help lead them to success in that area of focus. And we want to also make sure that they know how they're going to measure that strategy and measure the effectiveness of it. And we're hoping that these PLCs can serve as a form of accountability. And so that's the structure that we provide to each of these meetings. And we've been really pleased to have so many teachers engage with us during these PLCs. They go from 3:45 to 4:45, and anyone is welcome to join and talk about these topics and learn about these topics. While it is geared toward our redesigned schools, we know that there is great learning to be had and that all of us can participate in that. So they are taking place the first Tuesday and Wednesday of each month. You just need to attend one. So we tried to offer that flexibility this year of offering the same thing twice. So that flyer is there with the Zoom links. And we would just invite anyone to attend and come and learn with us about engagement. And so just to give you a little bit of an overview of what we've discussed this year, September, we focused on building engaging relationships with students. The video is linked to this slide, and I know that these slides will be made available after the meeting today. so you can catch up on these PLCs if you're interested. But we invited our friends from ESD Educational Service Center to talk with us about building engaging relationships with students. And during that time, they provided our teachers and us with a strategy called 2x10, which is built on the premise that you spend 2 minutes a day for 10 consecutive days, just actively trying to build a relationship. So not talking about work things or classroom things, but really just trying to explore new facets and interests of what makes that person whole. And so using that as a strategy to build those relationships with students. This past PLC, just last week for October, we focused on building engaging relationships with families. And for that, we invited our team from Santa Fe Trail Middle School here in Olathe, or not here, but not too far away in Olathe. And they talked with our teachers about how they have been actively working to build relationships with families through creating videos of their newsletters, translating their newsletters, even creating scoreboards in the hallway for the administrators to make positive contacts. And so we were really thrilled to have them and kind of prop them up as an example of ways that you can build engaging relationships with families. During that PLC, we also shared 2 valuable resources. The first one I'm going to put in the chat. And I might just go ahead and show it, but it has this continuum of, are you managing your stakeholders or engaging your stakeholders? And it might be taken a bit to load, but that link is there for you in the chat. And we would just encourage you to explore that and really kind of do that self-reflection for yourself of when thinking about your different stakeholder groups. Are you just managing them, or are you really trying to authentically build that engagement component? And so just a great resource for you all to explore. And then in addition to looking at that, we also made sure that our teachers were familiar with those family engagement standards to really think about where they can grow in those areas of family engagement. So as you can see, there's a lot of great learning happening in these PLCs, a lot of great sharing, not just of stories and examples, but of resources. And so again, that flyer is in the chat and all are welcome to attend and learn with us. And in November, we'll focus on building engaging relationships with staff. And again, ESDAC will be with us. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tammy.
Thanks. So I just wanted to just briefly give you an update of where the Apollo 3 schools are, the last official space named cohort for redesign. They have recently just finished the stage, if you would, the building the launch pad phase. And in that phase, September and October, they were establishing their collective why they wanted to redesign and developing their shared vision. They are increasing their knowledge of the principles, they're developing their communication plan, and they are communicating and engaging stakeholders. And so moving forward, they're going to be starting to establish their goal areas, organizing their investigation teams. And that's where it really gets exciting, because they start trying to figure out what do they really want to focus on, and what are those strategies that they want to try out and test and try on to see what's going to make the final cut for their redesign plan. But for right now, I just wanted to talk a little bit about that shared vision piece, because whether you're a redesign school or not, this is tough work. And without a shared vision for what you're shooting for, it is really easy to get discouraged and burned out. In 2009, that seems like a long time ago, Simon Sinek shared a movement to help people become inspired at their work. And he did a TED Talk called Start With Why. And you might have seen that TED Talk, we've used it before, but since then, 28 million people have viewed that. And it is the 3rd most popular TED video of all time. Start With Why. Now, if you follow John Gordon on Twitter, just this week, he tweeted, "Remember your why today. We don't get burned out because of what we do. We burn out because we forget why we do it." You're here to make a difference, and you can right where you are. So no one is completely immune to burnout, and COVID has been a long haul. You have colleagues, you have employees that are on 2 extremes. They've either forgotten why they're doing what they're doing, they've lost sight of your school's vision, and they're burning out. Or they have taken that why to heart so deeply that they are not doing self-care and they're about to burn out. So how can you refocus everyone back on your shared vision, back on why you're doing what you're doing, and infuse that self-care piece? Because we can't afford for anyone on this Zoom or anyone that we work with to burn out. So this is just my little pep talk to you. Take everyone back to your shared vision, take everyone back to why they're in this industry and why it's so important. And let's hang on to as many people as we possibly can as we move forward. Next slide, please. You might want to evaluate your current vision. Take a look at it. Is it future focused? Is it centered on cognitive and social emotional outcomes? Is it inclusive of all students? And think back to how you might have created it. Was it created with student input, family input, school staff input, community and business input? That's not just our idea of what makes a good vision. It's based in research. And when you go to these slides and look in the notes section, the citation is there. Maybe you need to shore up your vision. Maybe you just need to redefine it, but we just want to encourage you to move forward and keep that main vision in mind. Moving forward, just some tips. Is your vision prominently displayed? Is it communicated to all stakeholders? There's some other ideas on here, but one thing I want to challenge you is, if your vision is so long that your youngest student can't remember it and recite it, you might want to think about how many words are in your vision. Okay. We used to do mission statements. Remember that? You know, a half-page mission statement that no one ever looked at. That's not what this is. Your vision needs to be succinct. It needs to be clear. And at the elementary level, I would love it if every little kindergartner in your building knew exactly what your vision was and could say it without having to read it. And so just some encouragement, again, strengthen and refocus on your vision, and ensure that your school's vision aligns with and supports the vision of your district, and make sure your administration and your local school board not only are aware of your school vision, but they are part of the stakeholders that helped you to create it. And with that, I will turn it back over to Jay.
Yeah, thanks, Tammy. Great reminders about vision and the importance of that, and reinvigorating yourself around the vision. So you heard Michelle talk about the KESA regional training pilot, and she really showed you the model and took you through that. So we're going to get a little bit more nuanced about something we talked about the very first day of training in this regional, in the KESA regional pilot. And that's the importance of leadership. And before we move on to the next slide, I want to thank Dr. Hanslachek for her leadership for this group. If you think about balancing being a superintendent and chairing the curriculum leaders, that's a tall task. So thanks to Valora for her leadership, and especially for her focus on personalizing learning, which is a great challenge for all of us as we move ahead. So on the next slide, I'm a visual learner, so if you could actually skip that one, Sarah, and keep going to the next one. Some of you may be Big Bang Theory fans. I know that we are, as a redesign team, we use them a lot. But when you're talking about change leadership, you know, there's a myth out there about change, that people don't like change. We actually like and want what change produces. We just don't like the messy transition to create the change. So change leadership is challenging. And so we've broken it down into transformational, instructional, but you know that continuous improvement demands change, and obviously change demands strong leadership. I like a quote from Warren Bennis, that leadership is the capacity to translate vision into reality. And I know, you know, Tammy just talked about that. It's taking what you want as far as a destination and making it happen. And along while you're building your own capacity in these leadership styles, you're also trying to build others' capacity to lead. So day one of data analysis, we took some time to compare and contrast transformational leadership and instructional leadership. And you can see that transformational leadership is the bird's eye view. You're looking through a telescope. You're getting way above things and saying, where do we want to go, right? And how can we manage along the way, the benchmarks to get there? And then instructional leadership is really about looking through the microscope down into the classroom to really focus on the instructional strategies that you have found work to leverage student performance towards the vision. So we're going to do a little prior knowledge check, and we're going to go to Menti. So if you could, we can go to the next slide. If you could pull out your handy dandy phone and go to menti.com and enter that code 7029-3954. So at the top of this slide, menti.com, and use that code. We're just going to have a couple Menti questions. I want you to think about, what are the actions of a transformational leader? What do transformational leaders do? If they're looking through the telescope, what does that look like in action? So Sarah, I think we can go ahead and move over to, there we go. If you want to go to the Menti slide, that'd be great. We can start seeing some responses coming in. So the actions of transformational leaders. Yes, inspiration, heavy on that, enthusiasm. They grow other leaders, create a clear vision. They're innovative, well-read, very good. Ooh, they ask the hard questions. But a lot of vision, inspiring, enthusiasm, accountability, staying flexible, visionary. These are really good. What we're going to do is take a look at these in contrast to Hattie's research on these two leadership styles. Yes, support, far-reaching. I like that. They're multipliers. Okay, very good, very good. A lot of characteristics and actions of a transformational leader. Thanks for sharing that. In the interest of time, we're going to move to the next one. Think about those leaders that look through the microscope at instruction. What are the actions of an instructional leader? They also ask hard questions. Yes, it's the how-to. Driven by data. Again, they support leaders, or they support educators. A lot of data-driven. How do we get there? It's action-oriented. Yeah, lead them and get out of the way. I know you mentioned that earlier. And I know in reading a little bit about instructional leadership, you are an instructional leader for other instructional leaders, right? You're trying to build the capacity of educators to be their own instructional leader. I know you have many, many, many in your buildings out there in Kansas. The personal relationships, accountability, they lead by example. Okay, well, let's see how we did. So we're going to go back to the slides and pull up from Hattie's research the actions of a transformational leader versus an instructional leader. And I'll just be brief with this and then we'll move on. But let's look at the transformational set of actions first. You see some commonalities: vision, inspire. There's some things that maybe weren't mentioned, or maybe they were and I missed it. Give teachers a high degree of autonomy. fair and equitable staffing. This is a big one. They buffer staff from external demands. These are things that transformational leaders, according to Hattie, do. And in Hattie's research, if you just click the next, Sarah, Hattie's research, you all know, are probably familiar that the effect size that he works through found that transformational leadership has an effect size of 0.11, which, you know, the hinge point is 0.4 for a medium effect on student learning. So transformational leadership in Hattie's research has a low effect on student learning. But we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. So let's look at instructional leadership. A focus, I saw that multiple times. PD, communicating high academic standards, ensuring that all school environments are conducive to learning. I think there were a few comments regarding those. So a lot of alignment there with what instructional leaders do. And if we could click the next one, Sarah, then you can see that in Hattie's research that it had a 0.42 effect size. But that doesn't mean that the items on the left, the transformational leadership, aren't important. They are very important. Nobody can be an instructional leader 100% of the time. There's just too many other responsibilities for leaders. The effect size refers to the effect on student learning. However, research shows that transformational leadership is essential for retaining talented teachers. And you also have to have a tie to those instructional strategies that you're putting in place for what? As a means to what? Where's your vision, the goals, those kinds of things. So it's necessary that both exist. There's a balance between both to create those collaborative learning cultures. So thanks for participating. Thanks for paying attention a little bit, just a little bit about transformational versus instructional leadership. And I'll turn it back over to Tammy.
So I think we're encroaching on Dr. Watson's time. So, follow us on Twitter, send us emails if you have questions. We're here to support you, and we're supporting the KSDE team and Director Michelle Miller a bit more as our work becomes more integrated. So we're here to serve you. Thank you so much. And I'll turn it back to Brad or Dr. Watson.
All right, well, thanks, redesign team. And I believe we are ready for Dr. Watson to close us out.
Hey, as a reader of nonfiction only, that is not the question, Jay Scott, Tammy Mitchell, that you should be asking. The question is, what's wrong with the Chiefs? Okay, so if you've got the answer to that, you don't even need to put it in the chat room. You just need to call Andy right now because he needs some help. All right, that's what the key to that is. Hey, thanks for hanging with us today. There's a lot of things coming at you, and I Pat Happer, you're at the top of my screen, and Marty Stessman was at the bottom of my screen. But I'm just thinking about superintendents that are also doubling, as bus drivers and curriculum leaders and doing all that. And there's a lot of things coming at you. Good. They're all, well, mostly good. Not the arguments about masks and vaccines and the political arguments, but federal money, right, to do something really good with kids. A really good effort that we've been talking about around assessment, working with kids with dyslexia. But as you start to do that work, of course, we got to get down in the weeds. And that's what curriculum leaders are doing today, right? Getting you into the weeds on all that. So let me just talk about, of course, send you well wishes from the State Board of Ed. If you really want to get fired up, you can go listen to the Wednesday portion of the State Board of Ed meeting with Kansas legislative leadership. You might want to check that out. Tammy and Jay talked about the vision. Really simple. We're just going to knock it out of the park. Lead the world. By the way, my counterpart in Oklahoma, I told her she's running for governor. She changed her party and she's running for governor. So Joy's a really wonderful friend. And I teased her and I said, you got tired of never whipping Kansas. So what, you have to run for governor? What's up with that? So, you know, it was really a lot of fun just to tease her with that. But let's just talk about, you know, knocking out of the park. Just completed a 50 city tour. Many of you were at. Thank you for coming out. We are pouring over the research right now. Hope to have that out to all of you, maybe as early as in November, but certainly before we get to Christmas. I think we can hit that goal. So we'll be sharing that with you. It validates a lot of what we did in 15. And I just can't thank you enough for coming out. We had over 4,000 people participating in that. And it's great, great cross geographic research, small to large and everything in between. Here's the definition, crafted originally by Kansas superintendents of what we want within that vision of a successful high school graduate. Go on to graduate, go on to post-secondary, get an industry recognized certificate, do something after high school, make it meaningful, go into the middle class, don't need remediation. So when you're meeting with your teachers or your board, you know, take a look at your graduation rates. You've seen me do this, but I was meeting with a group of retired educators this week. All right. And I said, stop this because I like to look at you. Is that okay? Because we're not in person. Irritates me. All right. So retired educators. And I said to them, can you tell me when in Kansas we had the greatest percent of kids graduating from high school? And I got 1972. And no, I think it happened right in the No Child Left Behind era. And then, you know, I got all kinds of answers to that. These retired educators give me their best guesses. And the answer is today, or at least 2020, our latest research, never in the history have we graduated 88% of the kids. How about today? Go ahead, it's Friday. You could do a cartwheel, unless you can't, because we don't want workers' comp, all right? Because that's your work. And as you know, because I've said this over and over, how about kids that don't speak English as their first language? Oh, well, that's never been higher either. And it's also, we're closing the gap. We're closing the gap between all students and English language learners. How about kids in poverty? Oh, we're closing that gap too. How about students with disabilities? Oh, we're closing that gap too. I'm just wondering when WIBW and the Wichita Eagle Beacon and CNN is going to come interview Marty Stessman out at Lakin, or Pat, you up at Jeff West, and say, wow, how'd you do that? How did Kansas ever get so good? I don't know. I'm trying to beg him, because we've never been higher in the history of our state. And when they go on, you've seen us do this, 44% post-secondary effective becomes 46, becomes 48, it stays at 48. Never have we put more kids into certificate programs, 2-year programs, technical, community colleges, and 4-year programs ever in the history of our state. And since we can't, Dr. Flores, run up to Seaman and do a handstand or a cartwheel, we can at least spin in our chair. And so that's what I'm going to do in honor of all of you doing that remarkable work. 4% gain over the 5 years, when graduation went up 2.6. More kids went on than even graduated high school. So when people say to you, well, I bet all they did was lower the standards and let more kids walk. Wrong answer. You don't win the Jeopardy prize. That is the wrong answer. More kids graduating high school and going on. And how do we know that? Well, just look. Remedial rates of community college in 2010, almost 4 in 10 kids that went to community college had to take remedial courses. We've reduced that in 2019 by 6% almost. Those that going on to state universities, in 2010, 15% of them had to take a remedial course. Today, that's less than 9%. What's the definition? Graduate high school, go on to post-secondary without remediation. Oh, by the way, You've just done that remarkably well. Pretty good stuff. Pretty good stuff. And then COVID happened. Stinking COVID virus, right? And what happened was every single measure statewide that we are looking at has gone down. Math achievement, down. Literacy achievement, down. Graduation rates, I don't know, but I would be shocked if they're not flat or maybe gone down just a little bit. Post-secondary enrollment off the chart went down, tumble. Social emotional, oh my gosh. Have you seen the results? Teenage suicide up, anxiety, depression up. Every measure has gone down, not to your efforts or because of you, because of COVID. How about this quote? ACT says this in their research. The decline of the ACT test scores this past year is more severe than any other observed reduction in the history of ACT. So it's not just us. And they say it's most severe for younger students. So we're going to get through this. We're going to get through it together. And then, of course, we're going to come out of it even better. Our demographics continue to shift also. What you need to know is we're not going to get there simply by educating white Caucasian kids. You can see the green bar. This is white kids, has gone down in the last 10 years, 4%. Also, what is dropping are the number of African-American students. Those are the two groups not growing in Kansas. Who's growing? Multiracial students and Hispanic. And you're seeing that in every community. Every community is seeing it. Some greater than others. So when we look at that, if you're in poverty and you're first generational and you're multiracial and you're Hispanic, you're the growing population. And we're going to have to take some different approaches as we work with those kids. I just wanted to show with you the effects of the pandemic so you can see it. Here are elementary schools last year. Just to quickly walk you through it, this is week 1 of school, week 30 of school, and the blue represents how many schools were fully on site. And you can see throughout most of the year, fully on site. When we got in the middle of the year is when we started to see some remote by elementary school and hybrid and mostly hybrid, mostly remote. But you can clearly see with that most schools were in session. However, when we look at students, our largest school districts were more remote, more hybrid than our smaller school districts. So that's what we know. Secondary schools look remarkably the same. Most schools were in session. Not true so much of students, as you can see. We had a lot of students, mostly hybrid, again, because our larger districts were in that mode. Take a look at this, and I think it will tell you why every measure we're looking at is down. Students experiencing 2 or more changes in learning environment last school year, 26,700 in the first quarter, stayed pretty steady and then dropped off. So in essence, over 25,000 students changed between hybrid, remote, and in-person at 2 or more times last school year. And look how many high school kids did. When you do that, what you have created, as I jump out of this, is what we call trauma. The core of trauma, as all of you know from trauma-informed care with kids, is when a young student or any adult too has an unstable environment that they cannot control, and it goes on and on and on. That length of time and those conditions create trauma, right? It could be a divorce, it could be an abusive situation. It's this uncontrolled what's going to happen. And so when you, again, take a look at how many kids shifted environments, we know this. Simply from going from an elementary school to your middle school is a change that impacts student learning. Going from middle school to high school, those changes, because one of the factors is we always know is mobility. We created mass mobility last year. Say we created it in response to the virus. Okay, here's just some effects. Enrollments are down. By the way, when asked, they're down in the same proportion to with private schools. Private school enrollments down, public school enrollments down. What is up? Homeschool, virtual school. Some of those did come back a little bit in 21. We anticipate most will come back in the future. Average daily attendance doesn't look like it dropped that much, but look what happened to chronic absenteeism. Those kids missing more than 10% of the days of school. And guess what? They were disproportionately minority and kids in poverty and kids with disabilities. Interesting enough. Truancy, those are filed truancy in the county truancy numbers. Learning remotely went from 0 kids 2 years ago to over 34,000. And parents refusing to take the exam, in essence, got more than doubled during last year. That's just some of the effects of the pandemic that we know. I also want to give a shout out as we think about the future to the ACT work keys. It is, I think, the hidden gem in some of the assessments that you want to look at. Right now, we're looking at about 65% of Kansas students scoring at silver or gold or platinum. That's really where we want to shoot for, because you can see here what happens. You can be at silver. The increased wages that you're going to gain compared to the average wage is 63%, and it jumps to 102 with gold or platinum. So that's a great workforce employability assessment that I hope that we continue to look at. As Michelle Miller told you, I think it's pretty simple how you have to go about doing this. The details are very complex. We have to have a process that leads to 8 specific outcomes, right? It's graduating high school, going on to future success. How do you do that? You've got to raise social emotional, and you have to raise academic. I will continue to tell you, we are teaching in our tier 1 or in our whole group instruction or every day in school, we are teaching consistently a level depth of understanding of level 2, and we need to up that game to level 3 and 4. You have to execute that process. The Chiefs are not executing very well right now. I think they have a good plan. They have a good plan. They have good personnel. They're not executing right now, especially defense. Maybe they don't even have a good plan or the right people. And finally, we got to hit those outcomes. Those 8 outcomes as the state board has lined out. Those 3 have tons of details and they're really hard, but that's what we're going to be about. I was thinking as I jumped on today, I have had a lot of roles in education. Teacher in one of the smallest schools in Kansas. I think last time I looked, the 16th smallest high school in Kansas is Tescott High School. I was the department chair. They don't tell you that you would be the only person teaching social studies. That's why you're the department chair. But I was that. They didn't tell me that the junior class sponsor had to do the prom. I was that. They didn't tell you the senior class sponsor took the kids on a trip. I ended that, by the way. I was the last one to do that. And only coached girls basketball, girls volleyball, boys basketball, and track for 14,000. Also taught in Andover. I was an assistant principal, activities director, a principal, assistant superintendent, of course, my position now. I think my most fun, Rick Dole and I have this conversation all the time, was being an assistant superintendent, charge of curriculum and assessment and a little bit of personnel under a really great leader. That always matters. So I really appreciate curriculum directors and the work that you do, and superintendents that double and do that, and teachers that say, oh, what, they conned me into that, didn't know how much work that was going to be. And all of you, and thanks, Michelle, for dropping those 8 in there. So, hey, we've taken up like half of your day on a Friday. And I'm thinking, you're thinking, when will they shut up? Because soon you're going to jettison, and it'll be like, yeah, TGIF, I have a little bit of time before the football game tonight. I'm going to tailgate, and it'll be wonderful. All right. So thanks all of you for coming every time. Thanks to the people that put this together. I am so old. I to the first curriculum leaders way back in Andy Tompkins' day, out at Washburn Tech at the time. So thanks. And we look forward to working with you on all these things we've been talking about. Brad, back to you.
Thank you, Randy. I want to thank, many of you may not know this, many of you may, but I want to thank Pat Bone. She replaced Teresa Cody, who retired. So Pat works diligently on organizing and putting this all together. And I know I'm going to be in trouble here in a minute because I did not share this with you. Just want to remind you, our annual conference, November 15th through 18th, it's 4 days. It's virtual. We've got some great keynote speakers, and then there are also there are 40 breakout sessions to choose from. You can just see on here. Pat will make sure that she gets this back out to you. It's going to be a great time. Over 4 days, you can choose what you want throughout that time, but we will make sure we get that out to you. Wish all of you a great Friday. I hope everybody wins their games tonight, and we'll see how that goes. And everybody have a safe weekend, and can't wait till we can all get back in person again. So everybody wave at each other. We'll see you on a Zoom or hopefully in person soon.